Welcome, everyone, to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you, David Kuzma. David is the founder and private wealth advisor of Aquilo Private Wealth Advisors. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Otto. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. So before we go into your story, if you can just give the audience, David, a brief general overview of who is Aquilo Private Wealth Advisors.
Sure, absolutely. So Aquilo Private Wealth Advisors is a wealth firm that's designed for business owners. I really wanted to build something that was unique for business owners and felt that there wasn't a lot of options for those that are looking to sell their business. A lot of times the advisors do a great job on the personal side, but they don't understand necessarily the business side. And so our firm's really kind of built around helping business owners understand the integration of their business, their personal financial picture for their family. And then really the important one that I think gets lost a lot of times is the personal goals and the personal aspirations of that business owner post sale or in the next stage of their life. So really it's designed to be to help protect families and help them be good stewards of their wealth.
I'm sorry about butchering the name there earlier.
That's totally fine. It's okay.
Do you get that often, by the way, or not really?
Sometimes doesn't really bother me.
Okay. That's good. So mostly from the sounds of it is mostly just working with business owners who are in a period as far as selling their business, right?
Yeah, so it's also just those that are thinking about it, right? So but I'm also a certified exit planning advisor. And when I was doing all the coursework and the educations on that, you really got to see the difference between a best in class business exit and then an average business exit. And there's tremendous value that you can do before you actually exit the business. And that difference on the multiple between an average company and a best in class company can mean the difference between regular retirement money and legacy money for your family. Right. And so once I started to realize that, how much of the business is dependent on the owner, right? Well, when you're paying for a business or you're a buyer of a business, you want to reduce as much risk as possible. And if that business owner is also the salesman and he's trying to run everything and the whole thing's built on him, well, there's not as much value to be transferred to somebody else to buy it, right? So, what's the goals? What are you trying to accomplish when you're looking to get it out of it? And the other thing too is that there's three real driving factors of an exit of a business. The first is usually an unsolicited offer, right? So someone comes in, I want to buy your business. Well, the business in that scenario is not ready to be sold, right? The financials aren't ready. They're not ready. So you're going to get a lower value. The second one's usually a health scare, right? So you or your spouse or a family member, they have some kind of health scare that comes up and the business owner wants to reevaluate where they're putting their time. And so now all of a sudden they want out. And again, the business is not prepared to sell, right? So the financials may not be in order, and all the things that are kind of that add more value aren't there. And so, and the third one, can't blank on the third one, but those are the main two drivers, right? Is that it's an unsolicited offer, or the third one is they're tired, right? They're exhausted, they're ready to retire. And in those moments when they have that realization of just being ready to move on, they don't want to necessarily spend as much time to prepare the business for maximum value. They're just ready to be done, right? So in all three of those scenarios, there hasn't been the planning really that needs to take place for maximum value. And then again, that difference is between retirement money and legacy money. So what do you do after you sell, right? Like, so you sell your business and you got an unsolicited offer for 25 million. People think that they're going to get a check for 25 million, but there's this thing called the IRS and the taxes, and that's not what you get. It's all what you keep. And so I really felt that there needed to be more education around that planning process. And I felt that the financial advisor or private wealth manager that's really helping the family along is in the best position to be asking those questions. Hey, what happens if someone gives you a $25 million check tomorrow? Is your business worth 25 million? Are they undercutting you? Are they overpaying? Right? So there's just a lot of things that need to be asked before that exit so that you're just really trying to look out for the family, right? You're trying to be just a really good steward of the gifts that you've been given.
I can't wait to get into, David, as far as what can they do to sort of set themselves up and prepare themselves for when that time does come. But I'm curious, if things aren't in order to get things in order and get the highest evaluation as possible, typically how long is that period of time between them getting, let's say, an unsolicited offer or whatever it may be? There's some interest there to actually selling it, hopefully for top dollar to the best buyer.
Yeah, so it depends, right? So every company is going to be different because you don't know how far some of these steps have already been taken place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of it could be maybe you need a 3-month window to get a couple things in order. Sometimes you might need 12 to 24 months, right? Depending on the size of the company and how you kind of bring in. If you're building the business on the owner, right? And so here's the thing too, is that the owner just has to understand what kind of business are you building, right? There's those that are called lifestyle businesses, which is great, right? They usually have high income, gives the owner a lot of flexibility, but the whole business is built on that owner, right? So that doesn't have a lot of transferable value. It just has a great income.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, you're just trying to like extrapolate all of the savings and the cash flow out of that business, save enough money for your retirement. And there's a lot of different strategies that you can do that on on a tax deferred basis. But if you say to me like, hey, look, I want to transfer and sell my business, well, that's a different model, right? Like now you have to have transferable assets and a transferable thing that someone wants to buy. So I think understanding what you have and where you want to go, and if you're a lifestyle business, okay, that's fine. But maybe we need to build a sellable business, right? And then you have to kind of remove yourself as much as you want. And we can get into this, but there's 4 different actual exits within a business. So most people just think there's 1 exit, but there's actually 4. And so just really quick, it's everyone always hears like, oh, you work on or in your business and on your business, right? So like plumbing company, the owner is also the plumber who's doing the work. He's working in the actual business, right? And then you can go above that and be on the business. Now you got to think about bringing in other employees or different people. Now you're working on the business. The next level is up into leadership level, right? Now you have managers underneath you, you're on a CEO level, you're thinking more strategically and you're trying to still do some of the day-to-day stuff, but you're now on like a CEO level. So you've graduated out from the end to like kind of the leadership role. Then the 4th area, which if you can get to this level provides tremendous value to the business, is you get yourself out of the CEO role and up on a board advisory role, right? So now you still own the company, but you're not the CEO, you're not the COO, you're an advisory board member, like a board of director piece that's actually strategically thinking about how is the direction of the organization going. If you can get to that level, there's tremendous value in that business.
Wow. David, just to take it back and just now hear your personal story, and then we can go back into the business and everything else. Are you originally from this area, the DMV area?
I am. So I grew up outside of Annapolis.
Okay.
Or actually, as I was growing up, I grew up on the Naval Academy. So my dad used to coach for the Naval Academy for basketball, and was a big basketball star there for his time there. And so the Naval Academy was really like my backyard, right? We just go play there all the time.
Yeah.
So they grew up there, and then grew up in Crofton, and worked here, and then went to college at Franciscan University out in Ohio. So it's like 45 minutes west of Pittsburgh, just over the line. And then came back here and worked different jobs, and then, finally found my way into the wealth management side. But the thing that I always, it's kind of like the inner lining of all of my past is really just trying to help people. So when I was doing my master's in DC in marriage and family with a specialization in bioethics, I was working at a really high-end steakhouse, right? And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And I've always really been enamored by just trying to help people, right? Mm-hmm. And like when you get to a high-level steakhouse, like to me, it was a lot of fun because you're really trying to meet people at the most basic human need they have to eat, mm-hmm. right? And I was trained by a really good guy when I was younger about just the level of expertise. If you get a really good waiter at a really high-end restaurant, like you never know he's there, right? And all you remember is the conversation, which doesn't involve the waiter, it involves the guest that you're with, right? So just understanding like that level of how do you take care of people, or really kind of think about their needs before they really realize it. And so I've taken that philosophy with me over into the wealth management side of just really trying to take care of people and think through about like, how do we protect you and the family and be a good steward of what you're building?
I see. You mentioned your dad was a big basketball college athlete. Did you also play basketball growing up, or were you into any sports or any other activities?
Yeah, so I did play basketball. So my dad is in a couple Hall of Fames, and my grandfather is in a couple Hall of Fames for coaching up in Ohio
Basketball
and
also?
for basketball. So we were like a basketball family, and I didn't play D1 or anything like that. I just I was just an average player and didn't have the drive that my dad did. Or I mean, he was 6'7". My mom's 5'0". So like I'm right in the middle of that. My younger brother is like he's probably like 6'4", 6'5", and he got some more of that my
Okay.
dad's genes. But yeah, we love playing basketball. It was a lot of fun growing up, and it was always fun to play my brothers in the yard.
Did you play college ball in college or?
So I played intramurals. The
Okay.
school when I was there, they went D3 my senior year.
Oh,
So if I was there probably like 4 or 5 years later, I probably would have played basketball on a D3 level
hmm.
there. But we just played intramurals, and it was just a lot of fun because you could play all kinds of sports when you're playing intramurals.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking, I have three boys, and my two oldest ones, sort of the consistent sport has been basketball. And I would like for them to continue with it. I definitely see potential in one of them, but they're young, and there's a lot of time and effort that they need to go into it at that age. It's hard to sort of guide them if that's what they even want to do. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, so I have 6 kids, and my oldest is 10, right?
Okay.
And so I have 2 girls, then 2 boys, then 2 girls. And you just try and guide them the best you can. Like basketball is one of those interesting things. And it's definitely changed, right? Like you feel like you have to commit to doing like travel
Oh
basketball, and
gosh, yes.
you got like for this exposure and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think you know what I would think that if you're just like if depending on what level you want him to try and get to, like D1 or D2 or 3 or whatever, like if he's people will pick up that like, oh, he keeps scoring like 25 points, right? Like people are going to notice that stuff,
Yes.
right? So just keep guiding him and make sure he's enjoying it, and then you can do other stuff too to keep pushing him if you want to.
Yeah, I agree. Nowadays, with parents in the community, and during travel, soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, it's almost like a competition. And traveling to all these places, I'm like, oh my God, what is all this? I mean, the chances of your child becoming a professional athlete, it's slim to none.
It is. And one other thing too that my wife laughed at me about this, but I don't care. I'm still doing it with all my kids. Is that so? Some of my kids do swimming, right? And they go to these swim meets and they come back with like, or they get these ribbons of like 12th place, right? And like
Yes.
10th place and like 14th place. And so like I told them, I said, listen, here's the rule in this house. I said, first, second, or third. That's it.
Uh-huh.
If you get a 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 16th place, it's going in the trash. And so I make them throw it away when they get home, right? And I said, listen, there's a winner and there's a loser. There's not everybody gets a 15th place ribbon and you feel good about yourself. No, you were 15th place. You were the last one that came in. Like we need to get better, or you have to find a way to get like. So my friends laugh at me. They're like, "What, dude? That's so mean." I'm like, "No, it's not. You can't go to the Olympics and get a 7th place gold medal. Like, that doesn't happen."
Yeah.
So that's just my philosophy with sports, and just trying to get them to understand that, hey, if you want to win, you gotta work hard, or you lose. There's no tie or these, whatever
Yeah.
the place is. But that's just me.
You know what, though? I completely agree with you, David. They have, we've all I can try to do is expose them to different things. And we did soccer, for example, and they have participation trophies just to participate. I don't even know what place they placed. Definitely not in the top 3 or 5. Back when I was growing up, I was playing soccer in just the regular DC Stoddard Soccer League in Washington, and
Yeah.
only the top 3 players, only the top 3 teams receive trophies. But nowadays, everything's so different, and I agree with you though.
I mean, so some of them like Michaela ended up getting like, I think, third place at like the county meet. So she got excited about that. And she got a trophy that says like the most improved swimmer on her team. And I'm like, okay, that's like, yes, you were very bad. And then at the end of the meet, like the last couple of weeks, she was like shaving off like 5 seconds per meet, which is a lot of time in swimming.
Yeah.
And so, like we want to encourage that. But like some of the other stuff, like I'm like, we'll just see how it goes, but I'm not gonna let them accumulate participation trophies along this process.
No, that's true. You mentioned you went to undergrad in Ohio, and then you said grad school in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was it back then, business or finance related, or totally different field?
Yeah, so when I was at Franciscan for undergrad, I did a double major in business management and theology. So Franciscan was one of the best theology programs in the country. So I did theology and then business management. And then when I graduated and went back down to DC, I was accepted into the Pontifical John Paul II Institute in DC, which is a part of kind of Catholic. But the degree actually comes from Rome because it's defending the church's teachings on different things. Mine was on bioethics and marriage and family. So it was, how do you defend beginning and end of life issues within the context of the Catholic Church? So it was a fascinating, thing. So it was crazy because I would do that during the day or at night, and then I'd be working at that high-end restaurant, and people were like, "Oh, what'd you do last night?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I was waiting on like Obama, or like, Mitt Romney came through last night." I mean, these crazy people would always come through, or it was always fun, right? Like, and when I'd work like it's called a triple, like if I would do a breakfast, lunch, and a dinner shift, like all the way through, breakfast would be like some like Democratic senator that would be on the news at noon, and then like lunch would be a Republican senator that would be on, that I would see, like a prominent one, and then like dinner would be like another Democratic one. And it was just like constantly people were like, "What?" Like it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and you got to know who was coming in by the security detail guys, because I got to know like who the security detail was, and I just really enjoyed it. You're just trying to help people with like the most basic human person, and they're all people, right? It doesn't matter that they're on TV; they're all people.
Is that where you say you sort of hone your service skills in that job?
Yes, absolutely. So service was one of the areas that I really kind of started to take it to the next level, right? I when I was in, I don't know, high school or middle school, I worked at a restaurant. I was across the street from my house, and it was a higher end restaurant. It wasn't like a small one. And then there was a guy there that was like a 5-star. He was a manager, and he's like, "Look, if you really want to get good, then this is how you do it." And so he's like, "You just got to take care of people, right? You just have to really understand, how do you take care of people?" And he's like, "And when you get to the highest level of things, you really need to be able to, when you get to the highest level of stuff, he's like, you want to be so good that you're basically forecasting their needs before they need it, and that they never know you're there." Right. And he said, if you can get to a level where they never know you're there, and they've had all their needs met the entire night, he's like, now you're in a different world. Right. So he's like, if they never have to look for you to pour wine or pour their drink or food, like you come in, you get out, but they're not having dinner with you. They're having dinner with their people. Right. So like it was a different mentality. But once I understood that, and once you understand, like, how do you take care of people, it was also at this restaurant, I had 2 people underneath of me, and we had a section of like 18 tables, right? So 3 people taking care of 18 tables, you learn a lot of like quickly manage people, right? You're managing people and you're managing expectations, but everyone in that section had a wonderful time, right? So it's really, I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed taking care of people.
Yeah, that's great. So what led to then you getting into the finance and private wealth advisory industry?
Yeah, so it was always something that was in the back of my head, and it was just, again, trying to find different things. And since I was in the restaurant industry and really enjoyed it, I started asking friends like, "Hey, what do you think I should do?" I started to have like 2 kids and then 3 kids, and the restaurant industry is fantastic, but the hard part about the restaurant industry is that you make really good money, which is great, but you're going in when everybody else is coming off of work. So you don't have the greatest of relationships, or all your relationships are in the industry, right? So if you're going to go to a happy hour at 5 o'clock when you get off work, like I'm going into work at 4 o'clock, so we miss each other, right? And it's just not as conducive for me and the family that I wanted to raise. So then I started asking people like, what do you think I should do? I started to think back of classes that I really enjoyed in college. I really enjoyed wealth management and investments, and kind of started to look at, well, what is out there that I can really start to take care of people, because that's my strength. And so found wealth management. I got linked in with a guy over in McLean, and we built this great company, and he's very successful now, which is great. And I just felt like I was ready to kind of start to spread my wings and build my own firm. So that led me to last year when I launched out and broke away from him and started my own firm.
Before you started considering going into wealth management, were you doing any investments on your own on the side, or did the stock market interest you or anything like that?
Yeah, so the investments, I was doing stuff on the side, right?
Okay.
Like the investments on the side. But I think the bigger thing, and this is how I present myself within wealth management, is that there's different types of wealth management. So people use the term financial advisor for lots of different things, right? Like stock pickers and different things. So my strength is strategy, right? So I am very good about like planning and strategy and how does this all kind of fit together. And there's just tons of research out there that says like you can never be the best stock picker in the world. It's a fool's game, right? So really kind of making sure you have the right asset allocation. Are you saving the right amount of money to get to your goals, right? And not necessarily picking like Apple over Google, right? Like those are great companies, but if someone's like, "Oh, Dave, I want a short one. What should I do?" Right? Or, "Oh, I want to like hold one for 2 weeks." Like, I don't know, like pick up an 8 ball and see what it says. Like, like, so there is ways that you can get stuff, right? And so what I do for our firm is I will either do some of it myself, we'll do some of the investment managing for that I'll take care of, or I bring in like highly specialized people that are just looking at the market all day long, right? So for me, I wanted to build a firm that was family oriented, and there's so many more conversations to have with people than just talking about the stocks or their investments, right? And there's tax conversations. Like, for instance, this one particular client I'm working with, we're going to set up a donor advised fund, which is a charitable entity for him and his family. And by doing this, we're going to save him 705,000 federal tax dollars.
Wow.
So like that's a different conversation than asking like, where should we put our money, right? Like, so the real value, I think, for private wealth managers, some people like myself, is like really taking a holistic approach of the whole family, right? Like, how does this impact this? How does the business impact your legacy? How does this nonprofit that you're starting, how does that impact over here, right? And so that's what I'm really good at, is the strategy piece. The investment piece is fantastic, but I'll bring in people that don't want to do strategy and just want to do investments.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it definitely does. It's great that your strategy is totally different. I remember one of my first jobs, I was an intern in college, and I was working under two partners. They were considered stockbrokers. So they were with this global investment bank out here in Bethesda, and I was a cold caller, just dialing for dollars, as they call it, making hundreds of calls a day. And we were just seeing if there was any interest, and then we would get the brokers and they would pitch a stock or whatever it was. But that's what sort of led me into sort of being in the financial industry for that brief period of time. And then it got me into commercial real estate, because there was two brokers. One of them invested most of his funds in the stock market, but he was wild. He was from New York City. He just moved down here because his wife's family's from the area. He liked the action. So he was coming in and out. His net worth was probably, I don't know, low seven figures. The other partner, who I was mostly working with on a day-to-day basis, who was in charge of the interns, he was totally different. He was a stockbroker, pitched stock, but all of his investments mostly were in commercial real estate. He would track his net worth, and his net worth was, I don't know, 10 times. It was considerably higher than the guy that would invest in the stock market. So he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about this commercial real estate thing?" He was talking to me. And he connected me with some guy in a country club. He played tennis, and boom, here I am. And I've been in the business now for a long time. But their business totally different night and day than the way you conduct your business and what you do.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Right. That's absolutely true. And if you look at the most, like the wealthiest people, right, on the Forbes list, and you actually look at the pie chart of where their wealth is, a very small percentage is actually in the stock market, right? A majority of their wealth is in real estate or businesses, right? And so that's also too why, I think that there's the model, right? The broker model where you either can charge like an AUM or percentage of under management or commissions or different stuff, right? And so for me, as I'm building this firm, like I have a dual kind of percentage, and I feel like for me, the advisors that it's okay for other people. Like if people want to just charge their AUM fees, that's totally fine. To me, I feel like it diminishes the value of the advice that you're giving, right? If you're just charging on investments, like, so what happens if Otto, or like, if I say to you like, hey man, or you say, hey, I want to do this real estate investment and I have to give you $500,000, right? Do I think I'm going to give it to you if I know my money's going to go down, right? But if I have this other thing where this flat fee that I charge for the strategies and advice, like then I want what's best for you, right? So, or I'll charge like a percentage of net worth, because then it doesn't matter, right? The goal is to really protect you. So I think that the industry is starting to move towards that. They're starting to recognize that there needs to be more value on the financial planning side. And I think that people wrap it in because it's easier to explain. But there's tremendous value when you're doing the things that I kind of, have fun doing, like where you're saving people like hundreds of thousands in tax dollars. That's not really AUM model, right? That's not really like we pick Google over it. I mean, that's really kind of what I really enjoy. So
Yeah. Dave, I'm curious, you said you were with a firm in McLean, and then eventually about a year ago, you decided to go up on your own. What made you decide to go that route and not just continue and just affiliate with another investment bank or financial advisory firm?
So for me, there's two things that really did it. So like we were at a broker dealer called like Cambridge Investment Research, which is like an LPL, or, they're a broker dealer out there. And so it was just easier for me to stay with inside of Cambridge and just kind of have my own kind of office over here in Maryland. And it was just a really easy transition. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason is that during COVID, when I did my certified exit planning advisor designation, I was just enamored with the fact that there was such a lack of education, and I felt like there was such a lack of resources for the business community that wanted to exit, right? And so that really started to kind of like, I felt like who's really there to help the business owner have these conversations? Your accounting, the CPA is probably not going to talk about these topics. Your attorney is probably not going to talk about these topics. So who's really there to have these topics before you actually exit? Because a lot of guys come in at the transaction and it's all transactional work, right? So who's actually asking the questions like, hey, what do you want to do? Or how should we build your business? Or what does that look like when you leave the business? So I think that's why I wanted to build something unique for those clients. And, and for people that not every client is a business owner, but the silver lining of most of my clients is that they all want to be good stewards of their wealth, right? And that's really the key. They want to be good stewards of their wealth, and they want to do really good things in the world. So that's kind of like the bar that I kind of will look at. And, sometimes I'll come across people that are like, well, I just want you to manage my money. And I'm like, well, that's not what I do, right? Because it doesn't take into effect like, well, what is your wife's goals? What's your wife want to do? Why do you have the money? Right. And that's really the bigger question is you ask these people, well, what's the money for? Right. Well, if you can't tie a goal to it, then why do you have it? Right. If it's not enhancing your life or your kid's life, like, what are we doing with it?
Yeah.
Right. And if you can't so that's just my perspective, right? That's just how I view it. And I think that you can't necessarily decouple that from the person.
It's great that you're focusing on this too, because I keep hearing time and time again how, the baby boomers are retiring or thinking about retiring, and there are all these baby boomers that own these businesses. And depending on the size of the business, of course, I'm not talking about private equity level or capital markets type of level. There might not be, buyers out there if they're on the small to medium size, depending on the size. And I'm hearing that they're having difficulties as far as what's the exit strategy, what's the exit plan here.
That's absolutely true. And that's actually why I tell a lot of people, business owners as well, there's tremendous amount of opportunity to grow, right? So if you and I have the same business, let's say we're both plumbing companies, right? And I encourage people that are business owners, when I talk to them like, hey, do you know your competitors, right? Like not just who the name are, but do you know the owner? And they're like, no, or they'll say yes. Because at the end of the day, like if you all of a sudden say to me, like, you're a plumbing company and you say, Dave, I think I might sell. What do you think? I might be interested in purchasing you, knowing that I'm a good guy and then I will take care of your employees and I will take care of your legacy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or you're going to sell to somebody else or you're going to fold. And I think there's just a lot of value of understanding, like, well, what does that exit look like? And there's different values for exit. And I kind of touched on this really briefly. But when someone says to me, like, hey, my business, when I say to them, what's your business worth? And they say, like, oh, 5 million. My next question is, which number are you giving me? And they look at me strange. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, well, which number are you giving me? And they're like, well, it's 5 million. I said, who told you it was 5? And they'll either be like, oh, a friend or my friend's business sold something very similar. And again, this goes back to like the difference between average and best in class. But really, too, when you have a business, if you ask your CPA what the value is, the CPA's job is to diminish the revenue and make everything so you pay lower in taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually the lowest of the valuation on the perspective. Then you have one that's a little bit higher, where if you sell the business to maybe someone internally, like a management or a buyout or someone internally, well, that number is probably going to be higher than what your CPA is giving you, right? Because you're getting a little bit higher. Then the third one is a third-party seller. You're going to sell it to somebody else or the private equity or whoever. They're going to pay the maximum value. So when again, it's all education. Like they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So if they say like, oh, my CPA told me it's worth 5 million, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, it might be worth a little bit more than that because, he's trying to make it look like 5 to make sure you pay less in taxes.
Yes.
All legally. But so yeah, it's just, there's a lot of things that go into all those decisions on how do you prepare that business for exit.
I'm curious, do you ever come across businesses that you look at and you're like, maybe I should buy it? This is interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Like, and unfortunately I can't do that with my current position. Right. But yes, there is a lot of businesses that are out there that are tired or they've built it for a while. They've got great cash flow. The business owner might be making 3, 4, 500,000. And he wants to get right. He wants to retire and do something different. He's got a great business, great equity. And so, yes, there's definitely times of thinking about some of these things. And I would encourage people to like look at finding ways to buy businesses, right? Because there's so much value there. And even I was telling a friend the other day, he's like, yeah, I know a business. He was in my industry, but he just closed down his shop. And I said, do you know him? And he's like, I might know his name. And I said, so he closed his shop. He goes, yeah. I was like, he didn't sell? He goes, no, he closed his stuff. I said, you should reach out to him. And he's like, why? And he said, he has a customer list, right? And that customer list is very valuable to you for doing like marketing activities.
Yes.
If you're going to like target the people that already are in the same industry that use your products, like, why would you not do this? And he was like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it like that. So there's just tremendous. I think that people need to just get to know business owners. Now, business owners they can be funny people, right? They may not want to sell.
Sure.
But there's also a lot of ways that you can stack deals, right? And I think people think, oh, I have to have a ton of money to buy a business. That's not the case, right? There's a lot of different ways to buy a business. There's seller financing. There's just tremendous ways to do it, and there's a lot of money in motion right now, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage people, like, and I also tell them too, like, look at your business. What's your biggest expense? Is there any way that you can turn that biggest expense into a profit center and go buy a business that will do that and then do like that thing for other businesses? I just really enjoy all of it. Like, I really, really like all of this stuff.
Dave, can you give an example right there that you said as far as looking at that biggest expense you have and going to that?
Yeah. We'll make an easy one, right?
Okay.
Car. Let's say a auto shop, right?
Yeah, mechanic.
We'll say like a mechanic. So maybe his biggest expense is that he's always buying like tons of oil change stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll ask the supplier, hey, just curious, like, I mean, I'm sure he's not buying maybe he is directly from ExxonMobil, right? So I'm sure there's a middleman or some other people along that process. talk to them. Hey, I'm just curious, man. Like, would you ever be open to selling your business? Why? Because you're starting to control like your whole chain of command, right? That all affects your business. And so that's like just one level of that, right? Or if you look and you say, oh man, I'm spending like $2,500 on social media ads like every month, right? Talk to the company. Hey, would you guys ever be open to selling the business, right? Fold that into you guys, right? Now all of a sudden you have a small business that can run ads for you in-house, and that agency could also run ads for other people. Now all of a sudden you've turned an expense into a profit, right? A revenue generating piece. So you try and look at your business and you look up and down the scale of your whole business and say, okay, where are the choke points? Where where are the places that I can add value? And what happens if that guy that's selling you all the oil is like, yeah, man, I actually I've had this business for 25 years. I don't want it anymore. What would that do to your margins if you could just go directly from that, and you could then leverage that for all your friends in the area? There's just tremendous opportunities into this stuff, right? Like, on how to think through that.
That's true. In that example, would you suggest to get 100% ownership stake if possible, or maybe minority, maybe 20%, 30%, 10%, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those, right? Like, you never know the position of what that person is going through. And I think that you never know what's going on in their life. So for all you know, back to the original, like the 3 reasons on why you'd want to have an exit, their wife could have had a health scare. Their kids could have a health scare. They could be older and want to spend more time with their kids. You say, look, why don't I do like, I'll buy 20% of your business, right? Or I'll buy, different things. Or the other, I mean, now that interest rates are going up a lot, this wasn't the case, about 6 months ago, 12 months ago, but if you have a business and then you ask them, and I always encourage people, like, ask them, what are you going to do with the money, right? Let's say you're going to sell your business for $2 million. Oh, I'm just curious, man. Like, what are you going to do with the $2 million? Oh, man, I just want to, that's my retirement money. I want to spend more time with my family. Oh, okay, cool. So you're just going to use it for retirement? Yeah. What are you going to just put it in the bank? Yeah, probably just put it in the bank. What if you structure the deal where you pay him like 6%, right, over the next 10 years or 5 years? And you pay him out of the profits of his own business, right? And like, yeah, like, well, because the bank's only going to pay you 2% now it'll be more because interest rates are going crazy. But, if you structure a deal like, well, look, you're only going to get 2% in the bank. How about I pay you 5% or 6 or 7% over the next like 10 years to help you with your family and your cash flow? Is that something you'd be interested in? Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's do it. Right now, you've just structured a $2 million deal with very little money out of pocket. And you've helped out that business owner because you're helping his family, right? Like, to get more money from the transaction. There's so many ways that you can do this, right? And just the biggest thing is to just get to know who's up and down your chain of command, right? How does that affect you? And the same comes from risk, right? Like, so if you're getting all of your stuff from one supplier, like, you're back to the mechanic, if you have one guy that's bringing you oil, your oil changes, and something happens to him, who's your second, third, and fourth suppliers, right? Like, who else do you know? And I think that's more of a risk strategy piece, right? Of understanding where's your biggest risk. But if I'm buying your business and you have one supplier for oil, that's a risk to me, right? So, like, again, it goes back to like, how do you add more value to the business? Like, whenever there's risk in a business, the value goes down. Take out all the risk, the value goes up.
Dave, I just think about the amount of probably, let's call it, deal flow that you see, because I just go back to Blackstone, Schwartzman, when he founded it. He was an investment banker and he was just advising companies, typically large Fortune 500 companies, on investment banking. And then he decided to stand the private equity arm of Blackstone. And that's sort of, they went that way. With you seeing it, is there a way, or is there, like, I guess maybe a Chinese wall or some fiduciary duty that you can't sort of dip your toe and say, hey, maybe start a fund and let's just roll these in and see what happens?
I've definitely thought about it, right? It's definitely one of those things where, like, because I love strategy, right? Like, that's what I really excel, is understanding all these pieces and just breaking businesses down. And I think that's how we got connected with Blair. I like broke his business down in like 10 minutes. He's like, man, nobody's ever done that the way you did it, like, so quickly. And so I've thought about like doing a fund, but there's a fiduciary wall there, right? Like, I really want to help protect the families. And then if there's other stuff where I'll do stuff with business owners if they don't want me to help with the financial side.
Mm-hmm.
Then they want me to, hey, just do some consulting on how do I grow the business. Like, yeah, we could have an arrangement like that right now. We just do business consulting, right? And I do that with some of my clients. This was a business consulting arrangement where I'm just helping them kind of understand what are the value drivers within the business and on that exit. But I have to be careful with buying it myself.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do that right now.
No, that just interests me myself. That's why I was asking.
But you should totally do it, right? Like you should absolutely do it because it's the quickest way to make a lot of, great money quickly. And these businesses are already established, right? I mean, you know the stats. If you're a new business, 9 out of 10 of them fail. Well, if you can acquire a business that you can make an extra $100,000 a year, right, after you pay all your servicing debt and all that stuff,
mm-hmm.
and now you have an asset that you can grow or sell, right? Like but again, there's a certain type of person that does that, right? Not everybody can do that, and you don't want to encourage people to buy businesses and then they implode them, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not good either, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how that deal is structured, if it's an SBA loan, there's a personal loan there, right? Like now you got a bigger headache and an issue if you can't grow that business, or if the numbers don't add up.
Sure. You mentioned also you do business consultants. Are these typically business owners that are looking for an exit, or they just need help with anything related to the business and you're consulting with them?
So usually it's the second thing. So sometimes it's about like, hey, I want to think about exiting the business. Sometimes it's about like, hey, how do I grow the business, right? And there's just tremendous ways that you can grow a business, or define the business, or kind of reevaluate the business. Like, what's the business value proposition? Who's your clients? Why are they your clients, right? And then you can break down the other piece of it. But really, a lot of times I'll ask a business owner, like, what's your biggest problem, right? What's your biggest concern? And then once you kind of understand what their biggest concern is, then you can break down, well, here's some other things that I see as potential, right? Or after you get over this hurdle, you're probably going to run into these things, right? And again, like the biggest issue is that the business is built on that business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really getting them into a process of like, hey, let's build an organization, not a job, right? And so like, this is the great test too, is you ask a business owner, hey, if I said to you, let's go on a 2-week vacation tomorrow to the Keys, can you do it? And will your business grow? If you can't leave, there's issues there. Like there's risk there,
yeah.
Right? And so that's the next question is like, well, how do we get to a point where I can say to you, hey, let's go on a 2-week vacation to South Africa, and you can say, yeah, let's do it, right? Like, so that's what you try to get to, is you try and build to get to that point.
How can they, if someone is there and they're in the business, just like you said, and they can't go away and take that 2, 3, 4 week vacation, what are some things that they should be looking into as far as next steps to implement in order to, I guess, grow the organization for them to be able to do something like that?
So I think you have to start to look at, unfortunately, a lot of times businesses are a flat structure, right? Everybody reports right to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a problem, they go to the owner, right? So you start to you have to start to build an actual management structure across the board, right? And so like there's you probably have heard of like Traction and the EOS system that came out of Vern Harnish's Scaling Up. Gino Wickman made it better. And then there's a new book called Pinnacle, and they basically took Gino's stuff and made it even better, right? And include more like strategy and profits. So once you can look at the structure, you want to figure out like, what are the functions that you need and who do you need in the right places in order to do that, right? So if you have an operations guy, like, can someone be the manager? Can you empower that guy to make decisions for you, right? Like, who's your finance guy? Who's your sales guy? Can you empower different people to run to different places within inside of there that they can make those decisions, right? So the less people you have reporting to you, the better you can probably be, and you can work on a strategic level or strategic relationships. But that would be the biggest thing, is how do you start to remove yourself from the business? And if you're the guy doing all the sales, okay, then we need to start to develop like a sales team or like some sales processes or a sales manager around that, right? And that's how you kind of break that down. It takes time, right? You can't do it overnight, but you start to look at, I tell people like 2 weeks, let's evaluate your time for 2 weeks. Where are you spending the most of your time? Which questions, which problems, right? Okay, well, look, if we look at it, over 50% of your time, you're answering customer complaints. well, let's build out something that is for just customer complaints, right? Like a customer service center. And then I would say, like, I encourage people too, and I think this is a knock. I think, unfortunately, people don't really give the restaurant people enough credit, right? And they're like, oh, you worked in a restaurant, you don't really know business. But you know what they do know? They know how to take care of people, right? And
Mhm.
so I tell people this all the time. If you're at like a restaurant and this person's like really friendly, you can't teach that, right? So when you have someone that's really friendly, that might be a perfect person to like help you with just customers, right? Or take orders, or to like build them inside of your stuff. And if you can give them like a like legit money and they're not working table to table, they might say, yeah, I'll work for you for, $40,000, $50,000 and be a part of this team, because you can't teach, like, they understand people, right? And so I really encourage people, business owners, like, if you need some good people, like, go to a 5-star restaurant, see how they take care of you. Like, these guys know how to take care of customers, and that's really, really important.
Basically, always recruiting, always looking out for talent.
Yeah, and you'll find it in the craziest places. You don't need someone that is necessarily in your industry, right, for talent, right? And so that's what I would say is, like, there's tremendous talent within inside the hospitality industry, but people don't think to go there, right? Because they
Yeah.
just think they're just a waiter or a server or whatever, a bartender. But when you step back, or if you've been in the industry, then right? Like, man, this guy takes care of bad customers all the time, right? Like, why would you not want to put that guy on your team that has already built that skill set, right? Or that already knows how to have a really fun time with people. Those can be powerful superstars in your organization.
Yeah. Dave, working with business owners, are they a couple of pain points that you see time and time again, you see these business owners do? And I guess what can they do to fix it or make it better?
So a lot of times the pain point is they don't know how to get out and they don't know what to do after they get out, right? So there's a stat out there that says, regardless of the sales price of the business, 1 year later, 76% of business owners regret the sale.
Wow, 76%.
76%. And the number one reason that they regret it is they don't have a personal plan on what to do next. They don't know, right?
Hmm.
And so I've talked to business owners, and one of the things is like, what do you do post sale, right? Like, and you have to get people to have a vision of what their life looks like to pull them into. Or I always, a business owner told me this too. He said, everybody pushes you to get to the top of the mountain, get to the summit, sell your business, right? Everybody wants you to get there. We're going to maximize the sale of the business. But he's like, you know what, Dave? When I stood up there on the top of that mountain, I was alone and no one was with me. And he said, and after that sale, he's like, I sold for $200 million. And this is a true story, $200 million. He's like, after that sale, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. He's like, I didn't know if I'd ever be successful again. I had all this doubt in my head. I wasn't sure what to do next. And that spun me into a depression, which weighed heavy on my family. And it was like 6 months that this went by, and he went darker and darker, and he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know if he just doubted everything. And so he ended up reaching out to some of his friends that had sold for, that same kind of level of business, and said, hey man, I'm really struggling with this. And the light bulb for me was, every one of his friends said, oh yeah, I had to go through that storm too. Like, think about that. Like, you sold for $100 million and you go into depression 6 months later, right? And then I started asking and interviewing different business owners that sold for like 5 million or 10 million or 50 million. The emotional arc was identical. Didn't matter if you sold for $1 million or 100 million or 600 million. That journey of who am I and what do I do next is always constant. So the biggest thing that I see with business owners is, what do you want to do next? Right? What do you wish you would have done? What does the business cause you to do? Or, I really like the plumbing industry. Great, why don't you consult? Why don't you teach? Right? Like, you have the ability to do anything you want to now. What did you love about your business? Right? Like, did you love being the leader? Did you love the industry? Did you love your people? What is it that drives you to that joy and that happiness? And then you figure out, once you know what that is, you can then apply that to other things. I love to teach. I love to be in a team. All right, let's figure out, how do we do that? right? Is it a charitable endeavor? Is it a different organization? Is it, building teams and consulting with what you've learned and how to build a team? You have to give people purpose, right? And I think that's one of the biggest issues is, what do you do next? And then what does an exit look like? And if people have to be, they're just scared, right? They don't know what an exit is. And I tell people this all the time, that if you've never landed a plane, how do you know you're going to do it right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of these business owners have never sold a business, right? They have this plane and they usually have one shot to do it. So there's a lot of fear around what that looks like.
I mean, I can believe that. I mean, you're dedicating your life, decades and decades of your life to this business, and all of a sudden you no longer have it and you identify yourself with it. It's part of you. Yeah. If you don't plan it, how do you know what to do next with your next part of your life?
Well, and the other piece too is that, and it's just like a high level thing, but the other thing that I question business owners is, I'll say, like, what's enough, right? And because the fear is always that they left chips on the table, right? They always say, like, I probably left some money on the table. But I challenge them and I say, listen, if we do the financial analysis and we figure out your goals and we figure out how much money we need, and you need 15 million, let's say 15 million, right? Make it easy. And we can sell your business for 15 right now, or, a little bit more, maybe 20 because of taxes, and we can net you 15. Would you do it? Do we need to push the business to 40 million? Like, what does that do to help you? Right? Like, so having those questions are just as important when you can say, listen, if we sold the business today, like, you get to do all the things that we've mapped out, spend more time with your kids, travel, go to the beach, do all these things. But do we really need to push the business to go to 50 million? If we don't need to, maybe we should consider selling, right? Or bringing you up on that advisory board level, right? Where you can get above the business and then you can still have that lifestyle that you want. So I think that's just as important of understanding, like, what is your my choice? I call it my choice number, right? It's my choice whether I want to work or sell or do whatever I want. It's my choice. Mm-hmm. And so if we can get you there, or you're already there, do we need to push harder?
Where are you finding typically most of your clients?
A lot of them is either from just conversations I have with different people. Sometimes it's through attorneys or CPAs. Just depends, right? Sometimes people will reach out and be like, hey, I was talking to a guy, like, you should talk to him. And then if it makes sense, then we can, figure out a way to work. But I really just want to help people. Like, I want to help business owners feel like they've lived a life well lived and have been great stewards. And I just think that if you're building this business and you've been successful, then you should enjoy that exit. And it should be like an exit full of joy. Like, man, this was awesome. Mm-hmm. Not this regret, right? That so many business owners feel a year later.
Since you're working mostly with established businesses, David, I would ask, if someone were to acquire a business, obviously depending on what type of business it is, what is some advice you would give this person? Someone came in, just purchased a business. Business has been up and operating for years, decades, whatever it may be.
So there's a couple things you want to do. I would say that the biggest thing that you could do as a newly acquired, like a business owner of a new acquired business, get to know the people, right? Your people is your biggest asset. If your people leave, you have no business, right? So get to know them, take them out to lunch, learn about the business, learn about what really challenges they have in their own life. If you can become an advocate of your biggest people, the assets, and whether maybe you start at management, maybe that's where you start, right? If there's a management team in place, then you pour into the management and understand who they are. What are they in the right seats? What are they doing in the business? How do you understand that? And then maybe you encourage them to do that down the chain, right? Maybe the managers are the ones that are like getting to know these questions. But I think it's also understanding, like, really understanding, like, why does the business exist, and helping people understand what are the knock-on effects of this. So, like, back to the mechanic example, right? Mm-hmm. So you buy a mechanic shop, and then all of a sudden, if it was me, I would want to get to know the managers. Hey, man, tell me about I love working on cars. Okay, that's like, why do you like it? You want to ask those questions, and then also just helping when you have meetings, helping them understand, like, we work on cars and we do it really well and we love it because of what it allows for our customers to do. If the car's not working, the customer can't go to work. If they can't go to work, they can't pay for the food for their kids. They also can't help the mom who's helping their mother get to the doctor's appointments, right? So what we do is very critical in their lives. So why don't we do it well? And then why don't we do it in a way that they enjoy with smiles on our faces? Any business, you take that philosophy and understand what are the knock-on effects. You're not just a plumber, you're not just a whatever, like a widget guy building these things, but really allowing the employees to understand the knock-on effects of what's happening, and that you buy this supply, which allows for this to happen, and mapping that out, they'll have a lot more pride in what they're doing, right? On why they're doing that. And that'll just excel the growth of the company.
That's great advice. Are there any specific traits or habits you feel that you have that have helped you in business or even just on the personal side of things?
I think for me, again, it was always just the strategy piece. Right? I love the strategy piece. So when I was in college, I took a class called Business Problems, and it was really like breaking down all of the business from a high level. I never liked the little classes like the marketing class, or I mean, I didn't realize this until later, but I didn't like the accounting classes where they were like, hey, here's a multi-million-dollar balance sheet. Why is it off by 1 cent? Go find out why. Right? Like that did not.
Oh God, I hated that too.
That was just not my thing, right? And luckily, there's fantastic accountants that I know that is their jam. They love it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think the skill set that I've acquired is two steps. One, it's the strategy piece, right? And two, it's really understanding like how to take care of people, right? You can have the smartest guy in the world, but if they don't understand people, then you can't really build a great business. And if you look at all the great leaders, they all either have someone on their team that understands skills and people, or they know how to do it themselves. So even if you think of like, Steve Jobs, like people are like, oh, he was a jerk at times, but he had people around him that understood people, right? And so you really have to kind of figure out like people is your biggest asset, both your employees and your customers. And when you can understand how to really take care of them or do like surprise and delight things, then that really is how you build something special, I think.
Dave, what do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your career?
I think that I wish I would have followed my gut a little bit more, right? So there were times that I would think that I should do certain things earlier in the career, and sometimes people would say, like a guy that I thought was my mentor would be like, I don't think you need to do that, right? And in actuality, I probably should have gone with that gut feeling, right? Or leaned in more to my strengths, right? Sometimes, again, people think that because you come from a hospitality industry, you don't know a lot, right? Or you don't know what you're talking about. And I just think that the hospitality industry has a unique skill set that people don't really value. And if they understood that skill set, it could be a tremendous asset to a lot of different companies. So I think for me, I should have leaned into that more, and I should have just trusted myself that but it was all timing, right? If COVID didn't happen, I wouldn't have done that certified exit planning advisor designation at that time. I wouldn't have dived deeper into this business relationships piece. And so I think I can't really change I wouldn't change anything because it all built upon it. They're all Lego blocks, right?
Yeah.
To build to where I am now.
What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role at your business today?
So I think the biggest challenge is just getting the word out, right? Like that's always the biggest piece, is just trying to find the right business owners that are looking to do these things. Some business owners, they get it and some people don't. And I really want to build something that's kind of unique. I don't need to be like the next huge monster company, right? Like I want the people that I work with in our circle and our clients, they know that we take really good care of them, right? And to me, I always tell people this is that we'll get great risk adjusted returns, right? But at the end of the day, I want my clients to feel like, man, I've lived a life well lived, right? Like well done. And so the people that is the biggest for me is just trying to find those people, right? Like trying to find those right business owners that are thinking about selling or that haven't thought these things through. The other part of it too is that, like I said at the beginning, the term financial advisor is such a loose term, like saying oh, you're a doctor. Oh, okay, cool. But there's so many specialties within the doctor, and it's the same with the financial service industry, right? Like it's such a blanketed term. The people are like, oh, I have a financial advisor. And yet he could be doing the stockbroking that you said at the beginning, right? Like not actually understanding the strategy that goes beyond that. So I think for me, a lot of times it's re-educating people. I'm like, that's not what I do, right? Like, well, that's cool, but that's not how I approach things, right? Or that's not how our firm approach. So that's the biggest challenge, is getting over that hump of a blanket statement where people are like, oh, you're just a financial advisor, you do this. No, that's not what I do, right? So I do something different.
Yeah.
That for me, that's one of the biggest challenges.
I see. Coming to an end here now, what does the future look like for you the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I think for me, there's a book that I'm trying to work on right now. It's called Exit with No Regrets. I need to get that finished and get that done. And it's really just kind of a business owner's playbook on how do you approach the exit, and to kind of get them more thinking about it before the exit. So that I want to be done very, very soon. And then I guess the other 5 things is that, I'll have kids that are driving at that point, and just a family. And so just hopefully kind of building a business that really just helps more business owners, right? So I want to help business owners excel in the life that they have. So 5 years from now, I've really built that out. The book is done, and I feel like I'm doing the things that I'm making an impact, and that the people around me are also making really big impacts. I think there's tremendous opportunity out there, and I'm very excited for the things that are coming down the pike.
That's great. I love the name of the book, by the way, the title.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Exit with No Regrets.
Great title for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to get that finished. I've been procrastinating and getting distracted with other stuff.
I know you're a busy person, especially with 6 children. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I have 3 myself. My oldest is 11. My youngest is 6. So I can't imagine that times 2, which is what you have. But when you're not busy with the business, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
So right now I've been really enjoying playing chess with my kids. Just spending time with them is a lot of fun. And then I absolutely love having conversations with business owners, right? So I really enjoy having conversations around this stuff. It's just, even though it's like what I do a lot, I really enjoy that. So if I'm not spending time with the kids, or like trying to do fun stuff with them, or traveling, my wife is from South Africa, so we went to South Africa as a whole family in December for Christmas, and that was a lot of fun. But I just really enjoy what I do. I love having conversations with business owners, whether I can help them or not, just trying to give them some insights, or to get them to think differently. And then just spending time with my family. I just really enjoy just probably similar to yours. My oldest is 10 and my youngest is almost 2. So like, there's always something fun, or someone's like grabbing your leg, or like want your time for something. And so I just am really trying to cherish all these little days, because they go fast.
Yeah, there's definitely never a dull moment or a quiet moment.
No, as you can tell from our interview, we've had like all kinds of noises come through, like just constantly, like there's always something going on.
I didn't hear a peep, so that's great to you.
Well, that's good, because there was a lot going on over on the other side of this wall.
Dave, you mentioned earlier a couple books, so I take it you're a reader. Any go-to books you would suggest a business owner's listening to this that maybe will help their business or unlock something or thinks differently?
Yeah, so there's one called Pinnacle, and I'll grab it, because let me just grab. I forget who the exact author is. Hold on.
Okay.
So this is Pinnacle, right? And it's by where it's like, 5 principles. So it's the 5 principles to take your business to the top of the mountain. It's by Steve Preda and Gregory Cleary. Great book, right? Fantastic book. For business owners to kind of think through. Again, that's the next step from EOS or Traction. I mean, Traction is a fantastic, great book. Profits First is a great book too, to kind of think about how do you structure your profits and make sure you're having profits. And then this is, I think, a good one that I like, is Proverbs from the Bible, right? There's a lot of great wisdom inside of there on how do you become a better leader, how do you think about leadership, and even if you just read a little bit every day, there's a lot of really insightful things with inside of there. Another book that's really good is a book called Well Done by Ken Gosnell. My wife rearranged all these books into colors, and now I don't remember where anything is. So you can see it's all like color coded. Like no. I had the so Ken Gosnell's got a great book called Well Done, right? And it's again they're biblical principles for CEOs and for business owners to really instill like how do you be a good steward of your business. And I think that's also a good thing to think about, is that at the end of the day, like the business, yes, it's yours, but it was also a gift, right? We can't take it with us. So we have to be a good steward of that gift we've been given along the way. So, when you can make that shift from owner to stewardship, it can really excel the growth of your business.
That's true. David, people want to learn more about you, connect with you. Where can they go to find more information, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, my email is David .Kuzma at aquilowealth.com. Please feel free to reach out to me there. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And then you can find me also on aquilowealth.com. So www.aquilowealth.com, and you can find me there too. But please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have conversations. I love to have conversations, and I love to help business owners succeed.
Dave, I have to ask, where did the name Aquilo come from?
So I borrowed a friend's Latin dictionary, never made it out of A's. And so as I was reading through it, it was like the north wind, which was like it would also translate it into like an abundance of wealth.
Oh, nice.
So and I take wealth as a bigger meaning, right? Not just money, but like wealth of the person and the health and like spiritual, and just kind of understanding that wealth is it means a lot more things than just money.
Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time and sharing all the knowledge.
Thanks, Otto. It's been fantastic, man. I've had a great conversation.
Take care.
All right, take care.